hindi maganda, sabihin sa magulang at sa bahay muna. Sa kalye, bitagin! Best friend natin ang mask, suotin kahit saan. Ingatan ang kamay, maghugas pag galing sa labas. Sa school, bitagin! Sa pila, wag dikit-dikit, dumistansya para iwas sakit. Laging open ang window para maganda ang airflow. 3B's, tandaan, bakuna, bayanihan, bitagin! Halina't magtulungan. Ikaw at ako ang bitagin. Sa COVID di pa dadaig, sa ligtas na magbabalik, sama-sama maging bitagin.
Kristanos, sakay mo ako! Kristanos!
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
O God, creator of the heaven and the universe, you are worthy of our praises. In you alone we pray and submit ourselves, for we are nothing without you. We humbly ask for your forgiveness and mercy. Dear Lord, we gather here today with the intent of doing good in thy name. Guide us to the right path. May our efforts be blessed with insights, understanding, wisdom, and respect for all. May our deep faith in you give us strength to act honestly and well in all matters before us. Amen.
Isang makabatang umaga po sa lahat ng mga mag-aaral, magulang, guro, iba pang manggagawa sa loob at labas ng paaralan, pati na rin sa mga stakeholders and partners na nanunood at sumusubaybay sa mga oras na ito. Ako po si Harvey Doliente from the Child Protection Unit and I will be your host for today. Bahagi po ng pagpapalawak ng aming advokasya at pagbubukas ng kamalayan, ang Department of Education ay ipinagdiriwang ang dekada ng serbisyo ng Child Protection Policy o CPP sa pangangalaga ng karapatan ng bawat mag-aaral sa edukasyon at sa karapatan ng bata na maproteksyonan sa anumang uri ng karahasan, pang-aabuso, pananamantala, diskriminasyon at pambubuli. Sa mga nagdaang taon, sa tulong ng mga taong nagpasimula at sa pakikipag-ugnayan sa mga partners at stakeholders, ang DepEd Child Protection Policy ay naging isang kaparaanan upang maisulong ang holistic development at mapalaganap ang pagprotekta sa well-being ng mga mag-aaral sa pamamagitan ng pagtatatag ng mga child protection committees sa iba't ibang paaralan sa buong bansa. Kaya sa umaga pong ito, naglalayon kami na ipakita sa programa ang milestones at accomplishments, mga challenges na kinaharap at naranasan, pati na rin ang mga storya ng katagumpayan ng CPP sa mga komunidad at paaralan. Kaya samahan niyo po kami sa pagdaraos ng 10 taon ng child protection sa Department of Education sa pamamagitan ng pagbabahagi ng livestream na ito with the hashtag kasama ka. Maaari niyo po itong samahan ng caption na naglalaman ng inyong mga komento, nararamdaman, at mga nais na adhikain para sa pagpapatuloy ng pangangalaga sa ligtas na paaralan. So to kick off our program, let us listen to the welcome and keynote message from the Undersecretary for Fields Operations, Palarong Pambansa Secretariat, DIACO, and Supervising Execom of the Child Protection Unit. Attorney Rebsy A. Escobedo.
On behalf of our Education Chief, Secretary Leonor Magtolis Briones, I would like to offer my warmest greetings and regards to everyone. I would also like to personally express my sincerest gratitude to all our distinguished guests, former DepEd Secretary Brother Armin Luistro, USEC Josephine Maribohok, Director Marilet Almeida, OIC ARD Suzette Ganaban Medina, Attorney Alberto Muyot, Ms. Irene Funasher Pilizar, Israel Diloy, Ms. Edna Fe Ramirez, Mr. Rene Raya, Ms. Patricia Lim, Attorney Clarice Cahucom, Attorney Maria Lourdes Pogoso Alcain, Attorney Tricia Oco, and to all present here with us today. It is my greatest pleasure and honor to welcome you to the 10th year anniversary celebration of DepEd's Child Protection Policy. DepEd puts great emphasis on the well-being and the welfare of our Filipino learners in its mandate to provide quality basic education. This is exemplified by the department's efforts to create and implement policies that serve the best interest of the learners. One of these policies is the DepEd Order Number 40, Series of 2012, titled DepEd Child Protection Policy, which ensures that the learners are protected from any form of abuse, exploitation, or violence. Anchored on the DepEd Child Protection Policy, DepEd Order Number 3, Series of 2021, titled Creation of the Child Protection Unit and the Child Rights in Education Desk in the Department of Education. This landmark policy was enacted with the aim of upholding the right of the child to special protection and reiterating its policy of zero tolerance for any act of abuse and violence against the youth. The CREED and the CPU are at the forefront of the department, tasked to promulgate the existing policies related to the rights of the children. As we embody the values enshrined in the department's child protection policy, we are fully committed in continuing and improving the proactive measures to uphold all the rights of our learners in the context of basic education through these two offices. And now, as we celebrate a decade of the successful implementation of DepEd Child Protection Policy, we look back on the milestones and accomplishments we have achieved. In our efforts to uphold the protection of the Filipino learner, child protection committees within schools were established to bring the child protection policy development process down to the student level and encourage learners' participation in programs and procedures which uphold their own rights and welfare. With their close coordination with the Women and Child Protection Desk of the Philippine National Police, local social welfare and development offices, and other government and non-government agencies, the school's CPCs seek to strengthen the implementation of the DepEd Child Protection Policy by instituting systems that empower school personnel, parents, and learners through information dissemination projects and activities for the protection of children from all kinds of abuse and violence, as well as detection methods to identify learners who might be struggling with significant harm based on various physical, emotional, and psychological signs. Schools are also enabled to report identified instances of abuse to appropriate authorities and provide necessary support for the learners and those who care for them. We truly have come a long way since the creation of the DepEd Child Protection Policy. In the 10 long years since then, we have made efforts in ensuring that our learners and their rights are protected. As we celebrate the milestones and achievements that our department has attained through DepEd Order number 40, series of 2012, we must also look at the evolving period of time, where we are right now, and the next context and issues that arise within. In our journey towards the fulfillment of the DepEd Child Protection Policy, there are a lot of challenges that we are currently facing. However, I would like to focus on the rise of online sexual abuse and exploitation in the Philippines on the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Based on the National Baseline Study on Violence Against Children, which was spearheaded by the UNICEF and the Council for the Welfare of the Children in 2015, 1 out of 4 children, or 24.9%, reportedly suffered from any form of sexual violence in any setting. Furthermore, it is concerning that Filipino children are experiencing peer violence in the form of bullying. The NBS-VAC also cited a high prevalence of violence of all forms against lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender, or the LGBT plus youth in the country, alongside a high level of psychological violence. In the Philippines, 3 out of 5 children, or 61.5%, were reported to have experienced any form of psychological violence in any setting. Furthermore, according to the Save the Children Philippines, cases of online sexual abuse and exploitation of children in the Philippines increased by 264.6%, which is equivalent to 206,605 more reported cases during the implementation of the Enhanced Community Quarantine, or ECQ, from March to May 2020, compared to the 76,561 reported cases during the same period in 2019. The Department of Education does not tolerate any instance of child abuse. Thus, we will continue to be relentless in our mission to provide our beloved children with quality and liberating basic education that is safe and conducive for effective learning. In light of the aforementioned issues, there is a need to strengthen the DepEd Child Protection Policy, much so with the enactment of relevant laws such as, but not limited to, the Data Privacy Act of 2012, Anti-Hazing Act of 2018, and Safe Spaces Act of 2019. The DepEd Child Protection Policy and other issuances related to it should encompass the aforementioned laws for them to be truly effective in addressing the problems that our learners are currently facing. As enshrined in DO3 series of 2021, the CREED and the CPU are empowered to formulate policies to promote child protection. Thus, I enjoin both offices to take on the challenge of developing a more comprehensive, proactive, and enabling child protection in the context of basic education. To fully ensure the effectiveness and inclusiveness of our policies, we must involve our beloved children themselves in the policy-making process. The participation of our student leaders is crucial to the creation of rules and regulations which will truly empower and enable themselves without any fear and repercussions. In line with this, the Philippine Youth Convergence 2022 will be held on June 14 to 17, 2022 in Puerto Princesa City, Palawan. As detailed in DepEd Memorandum number 44 series of 2022, this is the impetus of the department to reassess, realign, and refocus its youth-related initiatives to be more responsive to the needs of the youth. Let us take this chance to properly listen to our constituents and give them the avenue to let their voices be heard. I encourage everyone to support and wish for the resounding success of the PYC 2022. On behalf of the Department of Education, I would like to thank the Child Protection Unit for the organization of the 10th anniversary of the DepEd Child Protection Policy. Through your zealous efforts, we are able to steadily progress towards our goal of improving the welfare of our beloved children through child protection. I hope that you will continue to innovate our current child protection policies and programs and develop new mechanisms to make them more timely and appropriate to our current context, as well as more adaptive to various challenges that may confront our Filipino learners in the future. I would also like to offer my utmost gratitude to all our invited guests today from different civil society organizations. This is the testament that the Department of Education is fully committed and open to partnerships with other government agencies and civil society organizations that are willing to promote the welfare of the youth. Thus, I am enjoining everyone to further strengthen our partnership so that we can create a better future for our beloved learners. Through our strengthened cooperation, I am confident that we will ensure that no child will be left behind. Lagit lagi para sa bata at para sa bayan. Mabuhay kayo at magandang umaga sa ating lahat. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat po, Yusek Rev C. Escobedo, for that heartwarming message to everyone. Truly, it is an honor na marinig po at mabigyang inspirasyon ng iyong mensahe. Tunay, hindi mababali ang ating patuloy na serbisyo para sa mga mag-aaral, sa paaralan at sa bawat komunidad sa ating bansa. Para sa bata, para sa bayan. At isa nga sa naging kaagapay natin sa pagpapatupad ng kalidad na edukasyon at proteksyon sa bawat paaralan at komunidad ang Child Protection Policy. We had a long journey and we are still treading the path ahead. And yet, the steps of passion done by the champions of child protection are what brought us here now. Kaya napakasarap pong magbalik tanaw sa mga karanasang nagpatibay sa ating paniniwala, advokasya at hangarin para sa ligtas na paaralan. Kaya malugod po naming ipakikilala ang mga kampyon na nasa likod ng pagpapasimula at pagsasagawa ng isang pulisiya na nakatutok sa child protection. Bilang kanilang pagsuporta, sila ay magbabahagi ng kanilang karanasan ng pagsubok at tagumpay sa pagbuo, pagpapasa at pagpapatupad ng pulisiya na ating ipinagdiriwang ngayon. We are greatly honored to introduce the people behind the successful conceptualization and the implementation of the Department of Education's Child Protection Policy. Joining us today is the current Superior General of the Brothers of the Christian Schools and the former Secretary of Education at the time of the issuance of the Child Protection Policy, Brother Armin A. Luistro. And we also have with us the Chief Executive Officer of Save the Children Philippines and the Undersecretary for Legal Affairs of the Department of Education at the time of the promulgation of the CPP, Attorney Alberto T. Muyot.
Isang mabiyayang araw sa lahat ng mga nagdiriwang ngayong ika-10 taon ng ating Child Protection Policy sa Department of Education. Si Brother Armin Luistro po, dating Secretary of Education, kasama ninyo sa patuloy nating pakikibaka para masigurado na ang bawat Pilipinong kabataan ay mapapangalagaan. Hindi lamang sa eskwelahan, kundi ng buong lipunan. Mahalagang-mahalaga para sa bawat pamilyang Pilipino ang ating mga kabataan. Tuwang-tuwa tayo kapag ating inaalagaan at pinapanood ang ating mga anak, mga apo, at ang ating mga kasama sa bahay na punong-puno ng sigla sa kanilang kabataan. Ito'y rin ang ating pinahahalagahan at ito rin ang nakapaloob doon sa ating Child Protection Policy. Likas naman sa Pilipino ang pagpapahalaga sa bawat bata, bawat sanggol, at sa mga kabataan na nasa sa ating pangangalaga. Kaya lang, nagbago na rin naman ang ating lipunan. Marami na ring mga modernong mga pamamaraan. Meron na tayong social media. Meron na tayong iba't ibang paraan kung paano ang ating mga kabataan ay nakikipagkita sa kanilang mga kasama. At maraming iba pang mga social media na applications na hindi naman lahat natin nakikita at pagbibigyan ng pansin. Mahalagang-mahalaga para sa atin ang pagbubuo nitong isang comprehensive child protection policy dahil ating isinasaloob ang ating mga pinahalagahan na mga bagay para sa ating kabataang Pilipino. Marami pa rin pagsubok at marami pa rin tayong kailangang bigyan ng pansin. Pero ang tunay na mahalaga ay kung paano natin bibigyan ng tunay at seryosong pagtingin ang implementasyon nitong ating Child Protection Policy. Sigurado akong hindi lamang ang Department of Education o ang education sector ang kailangang magsulong nito. Kagaya ng palagi nating sinasabi, the education of a child requires a village. And each one of us has a very important role to play. Every citizen must take care of the young ones who are entrusted to our care. Habang tayo nagdiriwang dito sa Pilipinas, hindi maalis sa aking isip at puso ang mga biktima ng Texas school shooting. At iniisip ko, kailangan nating pag-ibayuhin ang ating ginawa at gagawin pa para masigurado na ang ating mga eskwelahan at lahat ng mga lugar sa bahay at sa ating komunidad ay magiging ligtas para sa mga kabataang Pilipino. We have to make sure that the future of those who are the youngest and the most vulnerable in our societies will continue to be protected because they will be the foundation of this nation. I thank the Department of Education, its current leaders, as well as those who will come after us, for continuing the commitment to ensure that our schools, our centers, our institutions will be safe learning spaces for all of our children. Congratulations to all of you. Maraming salamat, DepEd, sa pagsusulong nitong Child Protection Policy. Mabuhay po tayong lahat.
Isang makabatang pagbati sa lahat ng mga kasama, kawani, at kaguruan ng Department of Education. Happy 10th anniversary sa ating DepEd Child Protection Policy. Siguro naalala pa nyo that it was during my term as Undersecretary for Legal Affairs when the Child Protection Policy was crafted. Prior to joining DepEd, I was a Child Protection Officer in UNICEF, and it had been my mission to carry over my previous advocacy in ensuring the protection of children from all forms of violence. I'm thankful that the Secretary of Education entrusted me with developing and implementing DepEd's Child Protection Program. Now, 10 years later, in my new role as Chief Executive Officer of Save the Children Philippines, I am so happy to see a developed and fully formed program with a special office and staff dedicated to the promotion and protection of the rights of all children from all forms of violence and abuse in the school setting. So please allow me to share with you how it all started. We were initially confronted with so many complaints, especially in media, of child abuse in the classroom. And I was tasked by the secretary to try to find out how we can best address this problem. So what I did was to organize a consultation, not only within DepEd and only involving DepEd personnel, but to my mind, the best thing to do was to have a multi-sectoral consultation where half of the participants will be from DepEd and half will be non-DepEd personnel, including parents, teachers, NGOs, government agencies, the police, social workers, local governments, so that we can have a more holistic policy on child protection that will be owned by everyone. So the policy was signed in 2012, and in 2013, we rolled out the policy through a national training of trainers on child protection. This NTOT became the foundational course for understanding and operationalizing the policy and covered key topics such as child development, children's rights, bullying, online safety, positive discipline, and most importantly, the reporting and referral of child protection cases. In this NTOT, we created training teams from each region and division office that were tasked to cascade the policy and support schools in setting up their own child protection committees. And when the training finally ended in 2015, we were able to train more than 1,200 DepEd personnel. But was the NTOT the end? No. Because we realized that even after we had the TOT, it still needed a more specialized capacity in order to make the proper referrals. So we took it a step further and created a second level course to upgrade the knowledge and skills of child protection trainers and for them to know how to handle child protection cases. So together with civil society partners and the DSWD, we trained and had designated and accredited more than 400 DepEd child protection specialists, whose responsibility it was to advise school heads and superintendents on how to manage serious and complex child protection cases, to train and advocate for the protection of children against violence and abuse, and to create a network of service providers within their locality for easy reporting and referral of trainers. I know that some of our child protection trainers and our child protection specialists are here today. And to you, I would like to say congratulations and express my gratitude for continuing your mission and pursuing the important task of protecting our learners. Now, aside from these trainings, we also develop resources on child protection. In 2016, we saw the rise of online violence and abuse and the proliferation of cyberbullying in social media platforms. And so, we sought to intervene through the development of the cyber safety lesson plans, which we did together with Stairway Foundation. These lessons were meant to teach our children with protective skills to detect potential risks and harms that are present in cyberspace. Also in 2016, we released the primer on positive discipline in everyday teaching with the support of Save the Children and eNet Philippines. This primer became a reference for our teachers in applying positive and nonviolent approaches to classroom management and provided examples of how to discipline children without using punitive and humiliating means. To support our program's endeavors, we campaigned to the Department of Budget and Management to insert a special line item for child protection in the DepEd budget. It was the first step in ensuring that the program will always have funding and will be recognized as one of the premier programs of the department. We also started to collect data and information pertaining to child protection. We created the first database on child protection and bullying cases, which we still use to this day. As Undersecretary for Legal Affairs, I ensure that all of our lawyers and legal staff nationwide are trained on proper investigation and handling of serious child protection cases. While I will be unable to recall the number of cases that went through my desk at that time, I will be able to attest that there's been a culture change. In that, for the first time in a long time, those who abused and mistreated children can no longer go back to their old ways. And I'm glad that my office was able to provide children with the much needed protection and at the same time ensuring that justice is done. In closing, I would like to say that while we have had many achievements of milestones, there's still a lot more that needs to be done. The child protection landscape is ever changing and is very complex. As duty bearers, our work is never complete. Many issues continue to affect the health and development of our learners, and with other concerns on climate change, on conflict, and the current socio-political environment, now more than ever, we need to remain steadfast in our mission to protect our children. While I'm no longer with DepEd, I'm still with you in pushing for the rights and welfare of our learners, especially the child's right to protection. We in Save the Children Philippines are here to support the Department of Education. To my friends and colleagues in DepEd, congratulations. And again, happy anniversary on the child protection policy. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat po, Brother Armin Luistro and Attorney Muyot. Lubos po ang aming pasasalamat sa inyong pagsisikap at paglalaan ng panahon na maipatupad ang Child Protection Policy. Ito ay posible po dahil sa inyong mga nagawa para sa pagsisiguro na ang karapatan ng bata sa edukasyon at karapatan na maproteksyonan ay kanilang natatamasa. At sa atin pong pagpapatuloy, hindi magpapahuli sa pagpapakita ng kanilang steadfast devotion as champions of child protection ang ating mga pillars of support who strengthened the resolution and the foundation of child protection within and outside the bounds of the Department of Education. Kasama din po natin ngayong umaga ay sina Attorney Josephine G. Maribohok, the Undersecretary for Legal Affairs in the Department of Education. Ms. Edna Fe Ramirez, Child Protection Officer of Save the Children Philippines. And Mr. Israel C. Deloy, Child Protection Specialist of Stairway Foundation Incorporated.
Magandang araw sa ating lahat. Let me first convey my sincerest gratitude and congratulations to the Child Protection Unit of the Department of Education for bringing us all together to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the DepEd Child Protection Policy. Indeed, there is reason to celebrate as this policy has been instrumental in achieving DepEd's mission to protect and promote the right of every Filipino to quality, equitable, culture-based, and complete basic education where students learn in a child-friendly, gender-sensitive, safe, and motivating environment. The road to crafting DepEd Order No. 40, Series of 2012, entitled DepEd Child Protection Policy on May 14, 2012, was not easy. But there was no other way to go. The dignity and rights of the child indubitably called for the birth of this policy. It is a landmark policy that promises to observe and promote zero tolerance for any act of child abuse, exploitation, violence, discrimination, bullying, and other forms of abuse in school. In its decade-long life, the policy has kept this promise for millions of children and continues to hold great promise in surmounting challenges on child protection in schools and learning centers. The imperative to issue the DepEd Child Protection Policy 10 years ago was dictated by the highest law of the land, the 1987 Constitution, which mandates that the state shall defend the right of children to assistance, including proper care, nutrition, and special protection from all forms of neglect, abuse, cruelty, exploitation, and other conditions prejudicial to their development. The Philippines, as a state party to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, is also obliged to uphold the right of the child to protection from all forms of violence and abuse. Given these legal mandates, DepEd, hand in hand with education and child protection stakeholders, developed the DepEd Child Protection Policy. The policy tasked DepEd to develop information campaigns, programs, reporting and monitoring systems, and recommendations to address and prevent issues of child abuse and violence. Through the years, DepEd has implemented the policy in collaboration with external partners, including UNICEF Philippines, Save the Children Philippines, Stairway Foundation, ENET Philippines, Consuelo Foundation, Internet and Mobile Marketers Association of the Philippines, among others. Various capacity building programs have been conducted across all regions in the country to enhance the knowledge and skills of DepEd personnel and stakeholders on implementing the child protection policy. These capacity building activities were conducted alongside the development of resource materials on child protection. Even during the COVID-19 pandemic, capacity building initiatives on child rights and child protection were pursued. Significantly, for the first time, these capacity building activities on child rights and child protection were accredited by the National Educators Academy of the Philippines, or NAEAP, thus monumentally recognizing child rights and child protection capacity building as integral parts of the professional development of teachers and other DepEd personnel. Completers of the trainings could earn points for crediting to their professional development portfolio. Subsequent to the issuance of DO 40 Series of 2012 as DepEd's mother policy for child protection, a series of other child protection policies were developed pertaining to bullying, children at risk and children in conflict with the law, and children in situations of armed conflict. Studies on the DepEd Child Protection Policy after 5 years of implementation show that there is a high level of awareness of the policy among learners and school personnel, but there is a need to strengthen its implementation, especially through the child protection committees in schools. Now, 10 years from the issuance of the DepEd Child Protection Policy, it is timely to look back and evaluate its implementation and review the policy. To address these identified needs and keep the promise of the DepEd Child Protection Policy of zero tolerance for all forms of violence and abuse against children in school, DepEd Order Number 3, Series of 2021 was issued in January 2021, creating the Child Protection Unit and the Child Rights in Education Desk in the DepEd. The Child Protection Unit, under the supervision of the Office of the Undersecretary for Field Operations, was created to fully operationalize, implement, and coordinate programs, projects, and activities pertaining to child protection. The DepEd Child Protection Policy has come a long way in upholding the right of every child to protection from all forms of violence and abuse. Nonetheless, under the leadership of the Child Protection Unit and with the support of the Child Rights in Education Desk, there is more work to be done to keep its promise of zero tolerance for all forms of violence and abuse against children in school. To paraphrase the poem by Robert Frost, we have promises to keep and miles to go before we sleep and miles to go before we sleep. Let me end with where I also ended in my keynote message in the first National Summit on Child Protection in August 2018. At bottom, we are all human beings possessed of dignity. While children's capacities and maturity are still evolving, they are nevertheless human beings deserving of equal respect like all of us. That is what all human beings are born free and equal means. Oo, bata-bata ating kinakalinga, pero bata pa man sila, sila ay tao na. Taong may dangal na karapat-dapat galangin, tulad din ng bawat isa sa atin. Happy 10th anniversary of the DepEd Child Protection Policy. Mabuhay tayong lahat na nagtataguyod ng karapatan at proteksyon ng bawat batang Pilipino. Maraming salamat po.
Hello everyone, my name is Edna Ramirez and at present I work as a Child Protection Officer in Save the Children Philippines. But before I joined Save the Children, I was the DepEd Child Protection Focal Person for almost 5 years. I joined DepEd in August of 2016 as Executive Assistant to then Undersecretary Albert Muyot. At the time, I had zero knowledge or experience about working in any child rights or child protection focus program. But all I had was this passion to do what I think is right and justified, and at the same time, the need to serve the people. When I started, the policy framework for child protection program was already in place. The framework policy, or the DepEd Child Protection Policy, was already signed in 2012. The anti-bullying policy, or the implementing rules and regulations to the Anti-Bullying Act, was signed in 2013, and the guidelines for the protection of children at risk and children in conflict with the law was also signed in 2015. And there had been many training programs already on child protection. The first comprehensive training program was the National Training of Trainers on Child Protection was completed in 2015, and it began in 2013. So when I joined, I was tasked with helping to organize the second level training for DepEd Child Protection Advocates, or the Child Protection Specialist Training. And so that's what we did. From 2016 until 2017, we trained and designated more than 400 child protection specialists for the DepEd. And their role was to help schools and DepEd personnel to manage serious and complex cases that are referred to them. And in between the trainings, we were starting a new program. This is what we call now the the Cyber Safety in Schools project, which is a response to an emerging concern, which is the rise in the number of cyber-related issues that are affecting our learners. And together with our partners, we developed informative videos and follow-up modules to the Cyber Safe lesson plans. And true to the DepEd style, we also organized a national training program on cyber safety from 2018 to 2019. And so we visited almost all of the regions since this was a national training program, and trained almost 800 DepEd teachers and personnel on the use of the cyber safe lesson plans and the materials developed by our partners Stairway Foundation, IMA Philippines, and Facebook Philippines to promote the protection of learners from risks and harms that are present in the online world. Of course, our work did not just limit us to capacity building activities. We also helped issue the Policy for the Protection of Children in Armed Conflict, or DepEd Order number 57, series of 2017. And related to online safety, we also launched an advocacy campaign called the #BeCyberSafe that won an OpenGov Excellence Award. So I have the plaque right here, and this is one of my treasured items from my time in DepEd. We also organized the first Child Protection Summit in 2018, which has been expanded into the National Child Rights in Education Summit in 2019. And now it's an annual thing in DepEd, and it's been happening every November during the National Children's Month. These are just some of the highlights during my time as Child Protection Focal of DepEd. And I understand that I have stood upon the ground, that I have stood upon the shoulders of the people who have come before me. I have benefited from the mentorship of my bosses, Yusek Albert Muyot and Yusek Jo Marie Buhok, who succeeded Yusek Albert when he left for Save the Children in 2018. I have received guidance and support from our partners and colleagues from Stairway, Consuelo, UNICEF, Save the Children, Plan International, and many more. I have learned many skills, including facilitation and public speaking, from observing many DepEd teachers and child protection trainers. But most importantly, I have witnessed how much I have grown throughout the years. From an inexperienced executive assistant into a child rights and child protection advocate. During my stay in DepEd, I only had one realization, that I have so much more to learn. Child protection is an issue that is far diverse and complex, and it is ever evolving. And as duty bearers, it is our responsibility to ensure that all children are protected from harms and risks that can affect their development. Emphasis on all children. So it is my wish that in the years that will follow, the DepEd Child Protection Program will push the envelope and reach out to groups of marginalized children, to make the program more comprehensive in scope, to make the interventions more effective and focused, so that no child will ever be left behind. And I thank every single one of you, to the organizing team, the Child Protection Unit, my DepEd family. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the DepEd community. And thank you for the many, many lessons and experiences. Happy 10th anniversary to the DepEd Child Protection Policy. Mabuhay po tayong lahat.
Good day, I am Ace Deloy, the Child Protection Specialist of Stairway Foundation. In behalf of the organization, we would like to extend our most heartfelt congratulations and greetings in celebration of the 10th year anniversary of the DepEd Child Protection Policy. As a child protection-focused organization, and having worked with schools and the Department of Education very closely for the past 10 years, we've seen the numerous challenges that schools faced in terms of child protection in the context of both prevention and response. With no clear department order back then which fleshes out concrete guidelines and protocols on how schools should implement child protection, schools back then had to implement child protection on their own. This meant a fragmented understanding and implementation of child protection in schools. In most cases, unfortunately, this also meant that the best interests of children were not necessarily put in place. And thus, with the issuance of DepEd Order Number 40, Series of 2012, what the department did was lay down very clear protocols or guidelines in the context of both prevention and response. This in itself is a clear milestone in the history of the Department of Education. As a member of the original training team which DepEd tapped in the implementation of the training rollout on the child protection policy, and subsequently as a partner in the promotion of child protection in the department, we have seen the following challenges in relation to the implementation of the child protection policy. As a department order, the child protection policy touches upon the personal beliefs and practices of teachers in terms of how they engage with the learners. In some cases, these personal beliefs and practices of educators do not necessarily align with what is mentioned or stipulated in the DepEd Child Protection Policy, and thus, the training of teachers and DepEd personnel in general has remained very challenging. Trainings on the DepEd CPP needs to be effective rather than only cognitive in nature. Number two, the sheer number of DepEd personnel that needed to be trained also presented challenges. The traditional TOTs being done at the national level on child protection didn't necessarily mean full cascading at the school level. Most of the time, information delivered at the national level when cascaded up to the school level meant that certain information was somehow lost or miscommunicated. The organization of the School Child Protection Committee was also a challenge, as many schools, instead of really organizing a committee, instead delegated responsibilities to only one person at the school. The DepEd CPP was also asking for schools to elaborate their own localized school-based child protection policies. However, in the absence of an official guide or an official training program within DepEd on how to elaborate school-based child protection policies, this remained a huge gap. Another challenge is a common misconception from schools that if they report high incidences of child protection cases in the schools, then this meant lower performance. Because of this, there is massive underreporting of child protection concerns in schools, which directly conflicts with the real-life experiences of learners in terms of safety in schools. The aspect of integrating child protection education into the K-12 curriculum remains to be a big challenge. Even with the issuance of additional policies such as the DepEd anti-bullying policy and the policies on children at risk and children in conflict with the law, there are still some policy gaps, specifically in terms of children's safety in the online environment. In terms of structures, the implementation of the DepEd CPP was also challenging because there was an absence of structure within the Department of Education which really exclusively focused on child protection. This was also manifested at the regional and division level, and thus the implication was that child protection was unfortunately considered as an add-on program because there was no sole structure really focusing on this. At the school level, even with the existence of the child protection committees, child protection has always been considered an additional program only. The main challenge has been really integrating child protection into the systems of the school, particularly integrating it into the school-based management approach. However, even with the numerous challenges in terms of implementing the DepEd Child Protection Policy, we've seen how the Department of Education and its development partners has continually pushed for the full implementation of the DepEd CPP. The following are what I would consider as the major milestones in terms of implementing the DepEd Child Protection Policy. First, the concept of child protection has been fully embedded into the collective consciousness of the Department of Education. Before, the concept of child protection in schools was a very alien concept, but now, the very idea of child protection in schools is now very much accepted within the Department of Education. The capacity building of personnel on child protection has been a regular activity in the Department of Education, whether it be via insets or via formal trainings organized by the department or by their development partners. This has been a slow and steady process of conscientization for the past 10 years, something which I would consider a major milestone in the implementation of the DepEd Child Protection Policy. In terms of the other numerous challenges that I mentioned a while ago, I think one major development which addresses and will be addressing these numerous challenges is the formation of the DepEd Child Protection Unit. In the short period of time wherein the DepEd CPU has been operational, I've personally seen major strides in addressing the numerous issues that I mentioned a while ago. These include the following. The DepEd CPU facilitated internal policy lobbying for the issuance of a child safeguarding policy for the online space. Another milestone that I would consider is the move of the DepEd CPU to launch a School Child Protection Committee focused capacity building program which addresses the following aspects. Number 1, ensuring that school child protection committees are fully functional. Number 2, empowering child protection committees to implement their mandates in terms of prevention and response at the school level. And number 3, enabling child protection committees to formulate their own school-based child protection policies. We are also happy to inform everyone that the DepEd CPU, in partnership with Stairway Foundation, has started elaborating an e-learning version of the CPC training program. This directly addresses the need to deliver consistent quality training while at the same time reaching out to massive numbers of DepEd child protection committees across the country. In closing, we would like to again congratulate the DepEd and in particular the DepEd CPU for organizing this event. The work of the DepEd CPU in ensuring that child protection is implemented at all governance level of the department is no easy task. There will be still major challenges ahead, and we hope that the DepEd CPU will remain steadfast in their commitment in ensuring that child protection is fully implemented. Kami sa Stairway Foundation ay mananatiling kasama ka, DepEd at DepEd CPU, sa pagsusulong sa proteksyon ng mga bata. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat po, Yusek Maribohok, Sir Ace Diloy, and Miss Edna Ramirez. Sobrang nakakaantig po na marinig ang inyong mga storya. At tunay, hindi nga naging madali at smooth sailing ang inyong mga pinagdaanan sa pagsulong at pagpapatupad ng child protection sa ating bansa. Despite that, you sparked the hope of change that greatly influenced young Filipinos. And not just the youth, but also the lives of our duty bearers. Your endeavors brought child protection in the doors of every community. And for that, tunay na hindi po matatawaran ang inyong mga pagsisikap. At ngayon po, bilang isa sa kasama ninyo at naatasan, sino nga ba kami ang Child Protection Unit na madalas kong nababanggit kanina pa? Ang Child Protection Unit po ay ang newly created office under DepEd Order No. 3 Series of 2021 na naatasang siguraduhin ang successful implementation of child protection policy. Ngayon ay aking ipakikilala ang mga pillars ng Child Protection Unit na inyong magiging katuwang at kaagapay sa patuloy na pagpaplano, pagsubaybay, pakikipag-ugnayan, pagpapatupad at pagsusuri po sa mga programa at proyektong may kaugnayan sa child protection. Presenting the pillars of the CPU, advocacy, communication and partnerships, capacity building, monitoring and research, and policy, standard setting, and legislation. At inyo pong natunghayan kung sino kami, ang Child Protection Unit na magiging kaagapay at kakampi po ninyo sa patuloy na pagpapatupad ng Child Protection Policy. Kung kayo po ay patuloy na may katanungan at nais pang malaman tungkol sa CPU, ang aming contact at email details ay ipa-flash sa inyong mga screen sa pagtatapos po ng ating programa. Sa ating pong pagpapatuloy, of course, the success of the implementation of the Child Protection Program won't be possible without the unwavering support of the people who bear the same burning passion for the well-being and protection of children. The people who continue to work side by side with us. We proudly introduce to you our esteemed partners who will share their message of support as well as the impactful gains their organization experienced from the implementation. Gracing us with their presence today, we will be joined by the Child Protection Chief of UNICEF Philippines, Ms. Patricia Lim Aken, the Executive Director of the Council for the Welfare of Children, Attorney Maria Lourdes Fulgoso Alcain, the Executive Director of the Juvenile Justice and Welfare Council, Attorney Tricia Claire Oco, and Attorney Clarice Cajucom, the Director of Programs of Consuelo Sobel Alger Foundation.
On behalf of UNICEF, allow me to congratulate the Department of Education on its 10th year anniversary of implementing the Child Protection Policy. Through this decade-long journey, UNICEF has been a committed partner of the agency in championing the rights of learners to be protected from harm, violence, abuse, exploitation, and neglect. We're grateful for this partnership that has supported the conduct of the first Child Protection Summit and the Child Rights Summits, and the formulation and adoption of the first 3-year strategic plan of the Child Protection Unit through the leadership of Undersecretary Revsi Escobedo. The establishment of the Child Protection Unit, overseen by the Undersecretary of Field Operations, demonstrate the commitment of DEPED to uphold and protect children's rights, even during these trying times of the pandemic. While the COVID-19 crisis remains a child rights crisis, it did not deter the agency to work with partners to address gaps that have been exacerbated by the pandemic. We hope that DEPED continues to carve out opportunities to let children's voices guide us on how to support learners access quality education and opportunities in a safe learning environment, whether digital, modular, or in person. UNICEF's Reimagine advocacy resonates with the aspiration of the Child Protection Unit's strategic plan and the Basic Education Development Plan in our reimagining of a better and more sustainable future for every child. We want to keep children healthy and well-nourished. We want to keep them on learning, and we want all children and learners protected from violence, exploitation, and abuse. Among the many programs UNICEF is undertaking, we are prioritizing the following: a costing study to support the functionality of child protection committees in schools, support to further popularize the CPU strategic plan and other relevant child protection laws, such as the increase of the age of statutory rape, anti-child marriage law, and the highly anticipated Anti-Online Sexual Abuse and Exploitation of Children's Bill, which we hope will become a law soon, and mainstreaming of child participation in a protective learning environment. We also hope to continue supporting DEPED in enhancing the curriculum on socio-emotional learning, which we have seen is increasing the rehabilitation of children in conflict with the law enrolled in the alternative learning system in Cagayan de Oro and Valenzuela cities. We also hope to increase positive behavior on digital citizenship to ensure children are safe online and practice protective, discerning, and respectful behavior. UNICEF hopes that DEPED will be part of a very critical conversation UNICEF is convening on how to strengthen the child protection system for our families and learners, and how education is linked locally, effectively, and organically to social welfare and justice systems in the community, with the end view of a seamless case management system that supports and prioritizes children. UNICEF is grateful for this opportunity to be a partner of the Department of Education. We are happy and privileged to be part of this community of stakeholders and partners that responds to the needs of children in the learning environment for every child. Mabuhay ang DepEd at ang Batang Pilipino.
The Council for the Welfare of Children commends one of its permanent member agencies, the Department of Education, on the 10th anniversary of the implementation of its child protection policy. Remarkable progress in ensuring the right of children to be protected from any acts of violence, exploitation, discrimination, bullying, and other forms of child abuse in the education system can be seen in the institutionalization of the Child Protection Committee within the school system, the advocacy on child rights, and the continuous capacity building of teachers and DepEd personnel in the proper implementation of the child protection policy. As a focal interagency body for children, the CWC fully supports the DepEd's leadership in promoting and fulfilling the right of every child to access quality education and to be protected from all forms of violence.
On behalf of the JJWC, congratulations to the Department of Education or DepEd on the 10th anniversary celebration of its child protection policy. The JJWC commends DepEd's initiatives to strengthen the implementation of its child protection policy and the establishment of its Child Protection Unit or CPU to further improve the harmonization of plans and tasks related to its child protection policy. More importantly, the JJWC truly appreciates the recent assignment of the CPU as focal for all matters related to juvenile justice. Thank you for your strong support in the implementation of the comprehensive National Juvenile Intervention Program or CNJIP for 2017 to 2022. As we embark on the last year of the current CNJIP, the JJWC would like to acknowledge the present commitments of DepEd. We greatly appreciate your ongoing initiatives, particularly in the conduct of capacity building activities for teachers and other personnel. You have significantly contributed to the realization of the CNJIP objectives and to a stronger implementation of the Juvenile Justice and Welfare Act. The JJWC looks forward to our continued collaboration, especially in the development and implementation of the next 5-year period of CNJIP. We are always excited and inspired to work with you towards our common goals that children's rights are protected, respected, and promoted, and for them to develop to their fullest potential and become meaningful members of the country. Again, congratulations and thank you.
Congratulations to the 10th year of the DepEd Child Protection Policy. Consuelo Zabel Alger Foundation has been working with DepEd for several years, and this policy has led our partnership to many things, from the sponsorship of the DepEd Positive Discipline booklet to the conducting of personal safety lessons for several school divisions. And just recently, during the pandemic, we provided 500 transistor radios and 82 smartphones and tablets for blended learning, which led to the development of how to implement this policy in the online setting. We also have an ongoing partnership on the integration of children's rights in the K-12 curriculum, and it will definitely be part of that too. This policy was definitely a step in the right direction toward the better protection of the rights of children in educational settings. It promotes positive and non-violent discipline, mandates the elimination of corporal punishment in all schools, which was pivotal for the creation of safer spaces for our children.
It's great that it has a zero tolerance policy to bullying, abuse, exploitation, discrimination, and other forms of violence. Hopefully, in its 10th year, all schools and learning environments are implementing this policy well because we all have a not only legal but moral obligation to protect our children from all forms of violence. Again, congratulations to the Department of Education on the 10th year of the DepEd Child Protection Policy from all of us at Consuelo Zobel Alger Foundation. God bless.
Isang malaking pasasalamat sa ating mga forerunners and partners. Because of your tremendous support, hard work, and dedication, we know we are not alone in this journey of actively promoting and ensuring that the rights of the child, especially the right to protection, are continuously strengthened and upheld at all times. Ang inyo pong maigting na debosyon, paglalaan ng oras, at kakayahan para sa pagsulong ng child protection sa ating bansa ay siyang patuloy na nagpapaalab ng aming mga adhikain para sa bata at para sa bayan. Maraming salamat po sa inyong taus-pusong pagbati at pagsuporta. At nais din naming iparating na hindi lang ang mga forerunners at partners ang nais naming kilalanin sa dekadang serbisyo at patuloy na pagpapatupad ng child protection policy. Alam namin that behind these child protection giants are the champion advocates in our schools and communities in all regions of our country. We thank you, the child protection committees, and those whose names we may not know, but nevertheless continue to strive to implement and to incorporate child protection in their respective families, schools, and communities despite the challenges. Your efforts are worthy of recognition. Kaya kami ay lubos na nagpapasalamat po sa inyo. Because of your unrelenting commitment to our advocacies, we are able to embark and tread the path of child protection along with you. At hindi pa po tapos ang aming pagpapakilala. Upang mas palawigin at palawakin po ang naaabot ng Child Protection Unit, kami ay nakipagtulungan sa aming partner organization, ang Stairway Foundation Incorporated, sa pamamagitan ni Sir Ace Diloy at Sir J.M. Matibag upang bumuo ng advocacy information, education, and communication materials na mas magpapalalim ng inyong pagkakilala sa amin at sa mga aspetong nakapaloob sa child protection. Nilalaman po nito ang pagkakakilanlan ng Child Protection Unit kasama ang mga mandatong tungkulin, adhikain at ang mga advokasya po at pati na rin ang praktikal na kaalaman upang masigurado ang matagumpay na pagpapatupad ng Child Protection Policy. Ang inyo pong natunghayan ay ang mga child protection advocacy materials na aming ibabahagi sa mga regional and division offices. At sila rin po ang mamamahagi nito sa mga schools sa bawat rehiyon. Isa po ito sa paraan ng aming information dissemination upang matiyak na kayo ay bukas ang kamalayan. Sisikapin po namin na madagdagan pa ang mga materials na ito at maging malawakan po ang pagbibigay nito para sa ating patuloy na pagsulong ng kalidad na edukasyon at ligtas na paaralan. At sa ating pong nalalapit na pagtatapos, I would like to call on our very own to give us her closing message. She is a child protection specialist and one of the forerunners of the child protection policy. She is now the OIC Assistant Regional Director of the Mimaropa region and the concurrent head of the DepEd Child Protection Unit. Please welcome Attorney Suzette P. Ganaban Medina.
Maraming salamat, Sir Harvey. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat at magandang umaga po sa ating mga manonood. At gusto ko rin po magpasalamat sa ating former secretary, Brother Armin Luis Tro, FSC, at sa aking former boss na si Yusek Muyot, Attorney Alberto Muyot. Today's celebration of the 10th year of the Child Protection Policy is very close to my heart as one of the forerunners by the time of promulgation. I have witnessed its decade of implementation. We caught sight of the threats to our precious children, thus we knew something must be done. Hence, in 2012, the Child Protection Policy was born. Abuse, neglect, discrimination, bullying, and exploitation are recurring issues in schools that we have encountered over the years. Agonizingly, this dark, vicious cycle of violence and heinous acts have been seeping through the tiny spaces of our learning environments. The mental and physical well-being of our learners were in attack, outwardly breaking the harmonious relationship between students and teachers, students and school, and even teachers and parents. Today, we are commemorating the 10 years of the Child Protection Policy, the beam of the hope that we ignited in 2012 as our response to these remorseful dangers. 10 years may seem like a long time, but the journey continues ahead because there's still a lot to be done. We have just started, and the optimum safe learning environment that we envisioned is still far from reality. Unless prevention is assured, unless everyone's safety is ensured, our service bravely stays on. As one of the forerunners of the Child Protection Policy, and now as the concurrent head of the Child Protection Unit, I envision what every parent would like to have for their children. As a parent and a mother to a 9-year-old girl, I would like my daughter to have a learning space that is teacher and child-friendly, safe, and motivates to attain the bright future that she deserves. And this, I believe, is what every parent would also want for their children. So many stories and messages abound on the success of the Child Protection Policy, even the challenges it faced and the experiences it had. Thus, awareness is imperative so that everyone will be enlightened to the horrifying reality of abuse, cruelty, discrimination, violence, bullying, and exploitation of our children. Let's not turn a blind eye and dismiss all this as trivial, because we were all part of building, shaping, and protecting the future of our children and the coming generations. To everyone present in today's culminating event, I deeply acknowledge your presence. To our learners, our parents, our teaching and non-teaching personnel, our school heads, our DepEd officials, our education partners and stakeholders, we deeply thank you for being here. To the forerunners and champions who joined us in today's celebration, I acknowledge all your efforts and contributions in making this event possible. This is yet another leap, another step towards the fusion of our goal. I believe that protecting the rights of children and safeguarding the community is possible when everyone is involved. We need to be steadfast, now more than ever, in strengthening our resolve to continuously ensure that the rights of the child to protection is upheld at all times. Gaya ng aming kataga, kasama ka, karapatan sa ligtas na paaralan, sama-samang makakamtan. Once again, a pleasant morning to everyone, and thank you.
Thank you very much po, Attorney Suzette. Ang inyong mensahe ay patuloy na nagbibigay lakas ng loob sa amin na nagnanais protektahan ang karapatan ng bawat mag-aaral. Isa po ito sa mga paalala na aming maisa sa puso sa aming paglilingkod para sa bata at para sa bayan. Gayon din, nagpapasalamat po kami sa lahat ng mga tumutok, mapa-learners man, guro, iba pang manggagawa sa loob ng paaralan at lalong-lalo na sa ating mga naging tagapanguna sa paglulunsad ng Child Protection Policy sa ating bansa. Dahil sa kanilang mga sinimulan, ay mayroon po tayong ipagpapatuloy. At para po sa huling bahagi ng ating pagdiriwang, I would like to call on the pillar head of our advocacy, communications, and partnership pillar na siyang magbibigay wakas sa ating programa. Aking tinatawagan si Ms. Janice Escandor Engera.
Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Muli, nais po namin kayong pasalamatan sa pagsama sa amin at sa pagtutok sa programa ngayong umaga. Tunay na malayo na nga po ang ating narating simula nung naisakatuparan ang Child Protection Policy 10 taon na ang nakalipas. Hindi po tayo nagtatapos sa isang dekada ng serbisyo at paninilbihan para sa kapakanan at proteksyon ng mga bata. Kasama ang ating mga partners, patuloy tayong magsusumikap na mas lalong pagbutihin ang mga programa, ang mga pulisiya, upang matiyak na ang mga karapatan ng bawat bata ay kinikilala at ipinagtatanggol sa lahat ng pagkakataon. As part of our advocacy campaign, and with the guidance and direction of our head, Attorney Suzette T. Ganaban-Medina, the CPU will run a documentary series featuring selected regions or divisions from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. The core theme will focus on the best practices and localized policies in the implementation of the Child Protection Program and other activities inspired by national policies and programs. Kasabay ng pagdiriwang ng isang dekada ng Child Protection Policy, ipinagmamalaki po naming ipakilala at ibahagi ang isang proyekto ng Child Protection Unit na naglalayong palawakin ang abot ng pagbubukas kamalayan para sa ating advokasya. Ang CPU documentary series na pinamagatang #KasamaKa Subaybayan. Ang pamagat ng programang ito ay naglalaman ng 2 salitang nakapaloob dito, subaybay at bayan. Ang salitang subaybay ay nagpapakita ng adhikain ng Child Protection Unit na bantayan at siguraduhin na ang mga karapatan ng bawat bata ay malayang tinatamasa. Isa din itong pagkilala at pagbibigay pugay sa mga pinakamahusay na pagsasagawa at pagpapatupad ng mga nabigyan ng tungkulin sa pangangalaga ng karapatan ng mga bata. Dahil dito, ay iniugnay namin ang salitang bayan na tumutukoy sa bawat isang kaagapay ng DepEd sa layuning ito. Kabilang dito ang mga magulang, school personnel, relevant agencies, partner organizations, and stakeholders, pati na rin ang bawat individual, ang mga kampyon na kasama at kumikilos para sa kapakanan ng mga bata at mga mag-aaral. At this point, nais po naming bigyan ng pagpupugay at taus-pusong pasasalamat ang Schools Division ng Calapan City sa pangunguna ng butihing Schools Division Superintendent Laida M. Lagar Mascareñas. Kasama po sina Ms. Nanet T. Makagiwa, ang Chief ng School Governance and Operations Division, Mr. Joey B. Gutierrez, Education Program Supervisor, Mr. Mark Lester E. Casapao, Education Program Specialist, at si Ms. Mary Ann B. Arellano, Program Development Officer. Kasama po natin sila sa pagbuo ng espesyal na handog na ito at nanonood po sila sa atin ngayon. Sa ngayon po, malugod po naming inihahandog ang pilot episode ng #Kasama Ka, Subaybayan na itinatampok ang Schools Division of Calapan City at ang kanilang safeguarding standards para sa lahat ng mag-aaral at kawani ng nasabing division. Bit-bit ang kanilang mga pangarap at pinanghahawakang mga adhikain at panata para sa mga bata, mga kasubaybayan, ating tunghayan ang panata.
Muli, ang Child Protection Unit ay kasama ninyo.
Kasama ka, karapatan sa ligtas na paaralan, sama-samang makakamtan.
Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat.
Panatang Makabata. Para sa bata, para sa bayan. Ito ang panatang araw-araw nating isinasabuhay sa kagawaran ng edukasyon, hindi lamang sa loob ng paaralan, maging sa ating mga tahanan at sa mga pamayanan. Ang panatang ito ay walang pinipili sapagkat ang paggalang at pagsasaalang-alang sa karapatan ng bawat batang Pilipino ay tungkulin ng bawat isa. Katulad nga ng kasabihang the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, ang Schools Division of Calapan City na may 58 pampublikong paaralan ay maigting ang pagsasalang-alang sa karapatan ng mag-aaral na Kalapenyo. Malayo na nga ang narating ng dibisyong ito sa larangan ng child protection. Maraming hamon ang nalampasan, maraming laban ang napagtagumpayan, at ito ang panatang nais nating balikan. Masayang-masaya tayo ngayong umaga sapagkat makakasama natin ang Chief ng School Governance and Operations Division ng Schools Division of Calapan City, isang kampyon sa larangan ng child protection. Mga kasama at kasubaybayan, narito po si Ginang Nanet Makagiwa. Magandang umaga, Ma'am Nanet.
Good morning, Sir Joey.
Kumusta po kayo?
Mabuti, masaya ako na kasama kita at nabigyan tayo ng pagkakataon para sa ganitong gawain.
Kumusta po ang lagay ng inyong puso pagkatapos ng napakahabang panahon na tayo ay dumaan sa pandemya?
Ngayon, masaya na rin ako kasi nakikita ko yung mga schools natin ay may limited face-to-face na. And once again, nakita ko yung mga bata habang umikot tayo sa mga schools.
Ayan, Ma'am, nabanggit nyo yung salitang bata, bago natin balikan yung inyong panata, yung inyong advokasya pagdating sa child protection, sapagkat ito yung usapin natin ngayong umaga. Paano nyo po bibigyan ng kahulugan ang salitang bata?
Sila yung, pag nakita ko ba, sila yung mga tao na pag nakita ko na masaya ko at inspired ako. Pero technically, syempre sa background ko bilang isang child protection advocate, ang salitang bata ay sinumang tao na ang edad ay 18 pababa or maaring higit pero hindi nila kayang proteksyonan ang kanilang sarili. Pero sa DepEd number 40, sinasabi na ang salitang bata ay sumasakop din sa lahat ng nasa paaralan, maging sila man ay 18 years above.
So sa konteksto po ng DepEd, yung mga mag-aaral natin, bata, mula kindergarten hanggang senior high school. Ma'am, ang gusto kong malaman, yung advokasya nyo pagdating sa child protection ay napakahigting, napakahaba na ng panahon ito. May personal po ba itong pinaghuhugutan?
Oo, kasi huwag natin sabihing personal. Kasi nung nagsimula ako sa DepEd, siguro dahil values education teacher ako, marami akong mga sitwasyon na nakarating sa aking kaalaman, obserbasyon, mga report na nakakarating sa akin na bumibiyak sa puso ko every time na may nalalaman ako na batang naabuso, whether sa loob o labas ng school, sa pamayanan, sa pamilya. Yeah.
Malayo na ang paglalakbay na tinahak ng Schools Division of Calapan City sa larangan ng implementasyon ng Child Protection Policy. Hindi biro ang 10 taong lakbayin mula sa pagmumulat, pagpapalaganap ng kaalaman hanggang sa tagumpay ng implementasyon nito sa mga paaralan, sa mga tahanan at sa mga pamayanan. Ayan Ma'am Nanet, sa pagpapatuloy ng ating usapin hinggil sa child protection, ito ang nais kong malaman mula sa inyo. Paano po ba nung nagsisimula pa ang CPP journey ng Schools Division of Calapan City? Paano nyo ito ilalarawan sa akin?
Nagsimula tayo actually noong 2013. Nagkaroon ang Central Office ng National Training sa mga trainers at meron tayong 5 kasama, 6 kami noon na umattend sa Puerto Princesa. Pero nung panahon na yon, nakapag-establish na naman, nakapag-organize na ng Child Protection Committee ang lahat ng schools sa Schools Division of Calapan City. However, siyempre yung pag-organize, inorganize lang yon, yung ano ba yung gagawin ng mga members ng Child Protection Committee, bakit ba sila nandun, ano yung tungkulin nila sa paaralan, lalo sa protection ng mga bata. Kulang pa yung kanilang kaalaman. So, simula doon sa training namin na yon, nagbigay tayo ng mga pagsasanay sa lahat ng miyembro ng mga Child Protection Committee sa schools.
Okay, so nabanggit nyo yung 2013.
Yeah.
So, 2013 tapos ngayon 2022, so approximately 9 years. Di ba? 9 years na. Kumusta po yung milestone? Ano yung mga significant achievements nyo na pagdating sa child protection?
Yan. Natutuwa ako, sir, na ikwento sa iyo. Kasi simula nung 2013 nga, series yun ng mga pagsasanay. Pagkatapos noon, nakita natin, pinag-aralan natin yung mga reported cases, mga nasa intake sheets ng Schools Division of Calapan City. At doon tayo kumuha ng mga modules na ituturo natin sa mga teaching and non-teaching personnel, members ng CPC. Kaya taon-taon lahat ng mga gender issues na ina-address natin sa gender and development activities ng lahat ng schools ay may kaugnayan dyan. Nagsimula tayo sa handling disclosures, case management, and then yung mga online safety, meron na rin tayo niyan. Gumagamit na tayo ng cyber safe manual sa buong division. At lately, itong taon na to, ang topic natin is Anti-Bawsi Law at saka yung Safe Spaces Act.
So, binanggit nyo yung proseso na pinagdaanan ng child protection. Pag ilalarawan nyo po ba, mahirap po ba ito or naging madali sa inyo bilang isang kampiyon pagdating sa child protection?
Mahirap siya in the sense na una, ang kalaban mo kasi yung kultura.
Definitely.
Kultura, saka yung karanasan ng mga adults, kasama siyempre dyan, yung mga teachers, ng teaching personnel, at saka mga parents, mga tao sa pamayanan na kung paano sila pinalaki, paano sila tinuruan, kahit pa siya ay ginamitan ng kamay na bakal, lalo sa paraan ng disiplina, tinatanggap nilang tama. At may tendency na ito rin yung gawin nila sa mga bata nila, whether sa pamilya man o sa school. Kaya nga, ito, naitawid naman natin to kasi sa ngayon, siguro pwedeng sabihin ko rin, nakasama sa milestone, meron na tayong Division Safeguarding Standards for our learners and personnel. At ito ay nagawa natin sa tulong syempre ng Youth Formation Section, ng Stairway Foundation, at ng Regional Office.
Ayan. At syempre, Ma'am Nanet, pinag-usapan na nga natin ang tagumpay ng CPP journey ng Schools Division of Calapan City. Maaari po bang ibahagi nyo sa manonood natin sino-sino yung mga naging katuwang ninyo para mas maging matagumpay ang advokasya natin na to?
Thank you, Sir Joey. Ako talaga masaya akong i-share sa iyo na saan ako kumukuha ng lakas at inspirasyon sa mga leaders natin sa SDO yon. Nagsimula tayo kay Ma'am Araceli Radasar Murin, ang ating SDS nung panahon na yon. And then ito ay sinundan ni Ma'am Susana Marasigan Bautista na ganun din talaga yung suporta niya sa Child Protection Initiatives. At ang sumunod doon ay si Dr. LCT Barrios. At ang kasalukuyan nating SDS, si Ma'am Laida Lagar Mascareñas, na silang apat, pare-pareho talaga na nagbibigay sa atin ng lakas upang ipagpatuloy ang gawain natin para sa proteksyon ng mga bata.
Ayan. So mula po doon sa inyong salita na yon, mula sa inyong sinabi, nakakatuwang isipin na ang ating mga superintendents ay talaga namang suportado ang ating mga advokasya pagdating sa child protection.
Yes, sir.
Ang bawat kwento ng tagumpay ng implementasyon ng isang programa o advokasya ay may kaakibat ding kwento ng mga hamong na pagtagumpayan. Katulad ng 10 taong lakbayin ng implementasyon ng Child Protection sa Schools Division of Calapan City, dumaan din ito sa napakadaming hamon at mga pagsubok. Ayan, so Ma'am Nanet, mas palalimin pa po natin ang ating usapan pagdating sa advokasya sa child protection. Ma'am, syempre, matagumpay na kung susumahin natin ang journey ng Schools Division of Calapan City pagdating sa CPP. Pero gusto po nating malaman, ano yung mga suliranin na kinaharap ninyo sa implementasyon natin ito?
Marami din tayong pinagdaan ng pagsubok, Sir Joey. Siyempre, almost 10 years ba naman ang implementation ng Child Protection Policy. Unang-una dyan, nakalaban natin is yung kultura, kung ano yung kinagisnan ng mga adults, kasama siyempre doon yung parents, saka tayo, mga teachers, kasama rin tayo. Paano tayo dinisiplina noong una, at kahit mali, kahit iba yung paraan ng disiplina sa atin dati, tinatanggap natin na tama yun. At yun ay isa sa naging nakita nating pagsubok sa implementasyon ng Child Protection Policy sa lahat ng schools. Pangalawa, dumaan din ako doon sa panahon na nag-alala din ako, nag-isip din ako, ano ba talaga yung dapat na agarang aksyon kung ang naireklamo ay empleyado na siya nagkaroon ng paglabag sa Child Protection Policy.
May mga kaso tayong ganun?
Meron, sir.
So kultura, tapos agarang aksyon.
Yeah.
So ito yung mga karaniwan nating suliran.
Yeah.
Pansin ko din sa halimbawa sa pagpapalaki sa pamilya, pag isang bata, pinalo, parang ang pananaw, tamang paluin.
Yeah, oo.
Ma'am, napag-usapan na rin natin ang suliranin. Pag-usapan naman po natin yung mga karaniwang suliranin na kinahaharap mismo nung mga bata. I'm sure you have information on our child abuse cases. So, pwede po bang ibahagi nyo sa amin to?
Tayo kasi, meron tayong mandato na taunan tayo dapat nagsasubmit ng report sa Central Office ng mga child abuse cases. At marami tayong reported cases ng child abuse, and then bullying. Tapos lately, meron na rin tayong mga online abuse, kasama cyberbullying. At common observation, kung merong mga pang-aabuso sa bata, isa din natin talagang problema yung victim blaming.
So, ito yung karaniwang suliranin na meron tayo sa Schools Division. So, sa gitna ma'am ng mga suliranin na kinahaharap ng mga batang ito, syempre bilang isang leader ng Schools Division of Calapan City, paano po nito binago yung inyong sariling pananaw pagdating sa edukasyon at pagdating dun sa tamang pag-aalaga sa ating mga mag-aaral sa loob ng paaralan?
Tulad ng sinabi ko kanina, every time na makakita tayo ng pang-aabuso, every time na makakarating sa ating kaalaman na may isang batang naabuso, binibiyak talaga nun yung puso ko. At ito yung patuloy na humahamon sa akin, personally, upang paigtingin pa yung commitment ko sa teacher at saka child protection. Hindi lang kasi child, pati teacher protection din. Kasi kung ang lahat ay may alam, ang lahat ay kumikilos,
may awareness.
Yeah, may awareness. So, mas maigting yung pagpapatupad natin. At syempre, ito na nga yung sinabi ko rin kanina, masaya tayo dahil ang Schools Division of Calapan City ay mayroong Division Safeguarding Standards for all learners and personnel. At ang ating implementing arm dito, ang focal person natin sa Schools Division ay ang ating Youth Formation Section.
Okay. Para sa bata, para sa bayan, ito ang mga popular na katagang araw-araw nating naririnig sa Departamento ng Edukasyon. Pero sa kabila ng ating pagsisikap na may sakatuparan nito, marami pa rin sa ating mga mag-aaral ang nagiging biktima ng pang-aabuso at paglabag sa kanilang karapatan. Ang mga bata na sinasabi nating dahilan ng ating pagbangon sa araw-araw ang siya ding nagiging biktima ng mga pang-aabusong ito. Marami ng kwento ng pang-aabuso tayong napanood at narinig, pero bibihira yung pagkakataon na mismong ang isang kabataan na dumaan sa madilim na bahagi ng kanyang buhay ay narito at bibigyan tayo ng inspirasyon at maririnig natin ang kanyang tinig kung paano siya nakaahon sa estadong iyon ng kanyang buhay. Panoorin po natin ito, mga kasama at kasubaybayan. Magandang araw.
Magandang araw po.
Maraming salamat sa pagpapaunlak mo ng panayam na ito.
Maraming salamat din po.
Ang tanong ko, kumusta ka na?
Maayos naman po ako ngayon. Nakakapag-aral din po ako at nakamove on na po sa mga nangyari po sa akin.
Ayan, so hindi na natin babalikan yon kasi ang magiging focus na natin kung paano ka naka-move on. Alam mo, humahanga ako sa iyo sapagkat ngayong araw na ito, nandito ka, humaharap sa mga manonood natin, nakikipag-usap ka sa akin, at binuksan mo ang bahaging iyon ng iyong buhay. Ang tanong ko muna, paano ka naka-move on? Paano ka naka-recover doon sa bahaging iyon ng iyong buhay? Kwento mo nga kay sir.
Naka-recover po ako sa pamamagitan po ng pagsasabi ko po sa aking nanay, paghingi po ng payo, at sa mga kaibigan ko po, at sa mga teacher ko po.
Mahirap ba? Mahirap bang sabihin agad sa nanay o sa mga teacher mo?
Medyo po, pero para po sa akin ay gagawin ko po yun para maproteksyonan po ako.
Yan, napakaganda naman ang sinabing yon. Pero ngayon, nabalitaan ko, ikaw ay nag-aaral na. Nag-aaral ka sa OMNHS. So, ano mga nangyari? Kwentuhan mo ako sa magandang pangyayari sa iyong buhay. Meron akong mga ilang mga narinig na meron kang mga pinasahan ng mga pagsusulit. Kwentuhan mo nga ako.
Noong grade 7 po ako, napunta po ako sa BK.
Ang BK ay Bahay Kanlungan. Okay. So, ilang taon ka sa Bahay Kanlungan?
Ano po, putol-putol po. Mga halimbawa po mga 3 buwan. Tapos, nalabas po ulit ako.
Pero masaya doon sa Bahay Kanlungan?
Masaya din po.
Okay. So pagkatapos na pumunta ka sa Bahay Kanlungan kung saan ikaw ay tumigil muna, ikaw ay nandun for reformation, anong sunod mong ginawa?
Nag-take po ako ng PPT.
Okay.
Tapos nakapasa po ako.
So mula grade 7, napapunta ka sa?
Grade 9 po.
Grade 9. So kumusta ang pag-aaral mo ngayon?
Mabuti naman po. At nakakasabay naman po ako sa mga activity po namin sa school.
Nag-enjoy ka sa school?
Oh.
Tapos isa pang magandang nalaman ko, meron kang gustong maging paglaki mo. Ito yung gustong maging kurso o maging karir. Pwede bang sabihin mo sa ating manonood kung ano yon?
Gusto ko pong maging pulis.
Ayan, gusto mo maging pulis. Ako naman, ako isang guro, ikaw isang pulis. So kita mo, may kanya-kanya tayong mga profesyon. Bakit mo gustong maging isang pulis?
Gusto ko pong maging pulis para po makatulong po ako sa mga nakaabuso din po at mga mahihina po ang loob. Na hindi po kayang ibahagi po ang kanilang mga nagiging karanasan po ng mga pagsubok.
Ayan. So, napakaganda nun. Isang araw magiging pulis ka. Marami din tayong mga iba pang mga kwento na ganito, na abuso, pero ngayon mga successful na. At isang araw, kami magiging proud sa iyo na makita ka namin na maging isang pulis. Ang dami ng mga kabataan na dumadaan sa katulad na pagsubok. Marami tayong mga kabataan na hindi pa lumalantad. Marami tayong mga kabataan na sinusubok ng mga ganitong mga sirkumstansya. Ano ang iyong mensahe para sa kanila?
Ang mensahe ko po para sa kanila ay huwag po silang sumuko sa mga pagsubok po na kanilang pinagdadaanan. Lumaban lang po at huwag pong panghinaan ng loob. Huwag pong matakot na ibahagi po ang kanilang mga naging karanasan sa mga may handa pong tumulong.
So nakita din natin na ang daming gustong tumulong, 'di ba? So muli kami nagpapasalamat sa iyo sa pagpapaunlak mo ng aming panayam na ito. Hangad namin ang iyong tagumpay sa buhay. Isang araw kikilalanin ka namin bilang isang pulis at isang araw magkikita muli tayo bilang ikaw ay isang matagumpay na individual. Maraming salamat at good luck on your future endeavor.
Salamat din po.
Dahil sa umiigting na pagnanais ng DepEd Calapan City na magkaroon ng magandang implementasyon ang Child Protection Policy, patuloy itong nagbabalangkas ng mga alituntunin at pulisiya upang maproteksyonan ang mga mag-aaral na Calapeño bilang mga bata. Ayan Ma'am Nanette, sa pagpapatuloy po ng ating usapan hinggil sa Child Protection Policy, ito po yung gusto kong malaman mula sa inyo. Sa inyo pong palagay bilang isang child protection advocate or specialist, gaano po ito kahalaga sa level ng ating mga paaralan sa Dibisyon ng Calapan?
Sir, meron tayong sinasabi, may kasabihan na it takes a village to educate a child, but it also takes one to abuse a child. So, kailangan talaga lahat ay may alam, lahat ay kumikilos. Bawat pamilya, bawat paaralan, bawat bata, bawat pamayanan, mga government agencies, tulong-tulong tayo upang masigurado na ang bawat bata talaga na ibigay ang lahat ng karapatan nila. At isa dito ang karapatan nila sa protection.
Habang nag-uusap tayo, 58 paaralan na meron tayo na pampubliko sa Schools Division of Calapan City. Ganun po ba ang lawak ng sakop ng ating child protection? Lahat po ba ay aware na?
Nagkaroon na tayo ng series ng seminar, orientation, yung mga awareness campaign natin. So lahat ng paaralan natin, lahat ng Child Protection Committee members, na-orient na natin yan. So in-expect natin na yung alam nila ay isinasagawa nila sa kani-kanilang paaralan.
Tapos kanina po, binabanggit nyo na yung safeguarding standards and guidelines for all personnel and learners of Schools Division of Calapan City. Parang ito po yung isa sa ating mga initiative, isa sa ating mga breakthrough. Kuwentuhan nyo naman po ako tungkol sa bagay na ito.
Thank you, Sir Joey, for raising that up. Alam mo, ako natutuwa dahil sa haba ng paglalakbay ng child protection, nagkaroon na tayo nitong sinatawag nating safeguarding standards. At ito hindi lang para sa mga bata. Kasi dati sinasabi ng mga teachers, bakit walang teacher protection? So from the title, safeguarding standards for all learners and personnel, pati teachers, teaching and non-teaching. Paano tayo nagsimula? Napansin kasi natin na sa mga nagdaang taon, ang kalimitang ginagawa ng ating mga paaralan ay pagtugon sa sitwasyon. Ibig sabihin, may mga nangyari na bago pa tayo kumilos. So, sa safeguarding standards, binigyan natin ng diin, ng tuon, ang paano natin maiiwasan ang pagkakaroon ng anumang uri ng pang-aabuso sa mga bata. Kaya, nag-conduct tayo ng series of seminars and write-ups sa ating mga guidance counselors, guidance teachers, at nabuo natin ang draft ng manual at ito ay dumaan sa series ng consultations 2 taon, Sir Joey, ganun katagal. Yes, 2 taon. And then finally, pagkatapos itong makita ng mga school heads, ng mga teachers, ng mga parents at ng mga bata mismo, ay pinirmahan ng ating SDS ni Ma'am Laida Lagar Mascareñas itong ating draft at ito'y pinadala natin sa regional office. At nakuha natin ang pahintulot at lagda. Matapos tayo magkaroon ng online discussions, reviews, kasama yung mga abogado natin sa region, finally nakuha natin ang lagda ni Director Nicolas Capullo.
Ay, nakakatuwa naman yan, Ma'am Nanette, isang pagbati po sa inyong leadership, sa inyong initiative. Kung susumahin ko, ang pinag-uusapan natin itong safeguarding standards na ito. Una, inclusive, hindi lang para sa bata, para sa lahat. Ikalawa, ito ay collaborative. Ibig sabihin, na-involve ang iba't ibang stakeholders.
Yes, sir.
Binabati ko po kayo sa achievement ninyo na yan at syempre ng Schools Division of Calapan City.
Thank you, sir.
At sa ating mga kasama at kasubaybayan, isang karangalan po na makasama natin ngayong araw, ang dalawa sa mga naging kabalikat natin sa pagtataguyod ng Child Protection Policy sa Schools Division of Calapan City, na naging katuwang din po natin sa pagbuo ng safeguarding standards and guidelines for all learners and personnel of the Schools Division of Calapan City. Ngayong araw ay narito si Michael Angelo Almoneda.
Magandang araw, sir.
Magandang araw. Siya po ay dating SPG Division President at syempre ang amin pong ginagalang na guidance counselor mula po sa Oriental Mindoro National High School, si Ma'am Marites Dar.
Good afternoon, sir. Good day.
Kumusta po? Kumusta kayo? Kumusta ka ano ka na, first year college?
Yes po. Maganda naman po ang nagiging daloy ng pag-aaral ko. Siyempre po dahil determinado pong makatapos ng pag-aaral.
Ma'am, nagbibiroan tayo kanina, parang at your age, ngayon ka pa nasalang sa mga ganitong usapin. Ilang taon na po ba kayong guidance counselor?
Actually, 40 years na ako in the service. Minus 33 years as guidance counselor.
Ayan, kaya naman napakalaki na naging contribution nyo dito sa child protection policy natin sa pagsasaayos ng ating plano. Kay Michael muna ako, gusto kitang tanungin, bilang isang mag-aaral, nung dating balikan natin yung istorya ng pagkakabuo ng manual, ano yung naging contribution mo dito?
Actually, sir, bilang SSG Federation President po, nung time na yon, napakaganda ng proseso na bilang isang kabataan at bilang isang student leader, student leader po tayo ng mga panahon na yun. Hanggang ngayon naman po, naglilingkod pa rin tayo sa bayan at sa kapwa ko mag-aaral. Nakita po natin kung ano yung pagkukulang ng isang kabataan na kailangan nating punan at kung ano yung kalabisan na kailangan nating bawasan. Kumbaga, sir, saktuhan lang natin. Yung proseso kasi nakita natin na kulang talaga yung bata sa kaalaman na may karapatan pala ako sa ganito. Na pag nilabag pala ako ng ganito, kailangan kong magsalita. Napakagaling po kasi yung manual na nagawa ay naging isang malaking tulong at kumbaga po ay tagamulat po ng isipan ng mga kabataan na ay may karapatan ako. Hindi ko kailangan manahimik kasi kapag nagsalita ako, mabibigyan ito ng aksyon.
Alam mo, habang nakikinig ako sa iyo, nakikita ko na yung magandang bukas na tatahakin mo. Narinig yung boses mo sa maikling salita sa pamamagitan ng manual na yun. Ayan. Sa punto naman po ng isang guidance counselor, ma'am, with your more than 30 years of experience, paano po nakatulong ito sa pagbuo at ano yung naging contribution niyo?
Actually, alam natin, no, na sa dami ng eskwela sa Oriental Mindoro High School, marami ding problema na nai-encounter ako bilang isang guidance counselor. At sad to say, isa nga dito yung mga abuses na nangyayari sa mga bata. Kaya nga nung nagkaroon tayo ng child protection policy, sa start pa lang ng creation nito, yung sinasabi natin na inilahad ng central office, itong child protection policy, nandun na ako. No? So kasama ako dun sa mga isa sa pinalad sa consultation.
Okay.
So natutuwa ako dahil napustro ito para sa kapakanan ng mga bata. Kasi ako as guidance counselor, marami akong na-encounter na problema. Kaya nga lang, syempre, ang kulang is yung bagang network.
Okay.
Saan mo, kanino mo dapat tamang idulog yung problema ng mga bata. Hindi naman po pwedeng isa lang ako na magsusolve ng problem. Kasi ito ay hindi pang-isahan. Kasi katulad nga ng may kasabihan, it takes a village to take a child, to raise a child. So, kahit anong ganda ng sasabihin mo sa bata o kahit anong magagandang programa ang paaralan, kulang pa rin para sa mga batang may mga problema katulad ng mga pang-aabuso. So, nung binigay nga itong child protection policy, nilinaw dito kung papaano ito gagawin, sinong magiging mga katuwang. So pag ang may bata ay may problema, hindi namin ito sole responsibility ng paaralan. Meron kaming portion na dapat naming i-patch up or aming dapat na i-cover up. Like the education ng mga bata. Hindi dapat mawala sila sa paaralan kahit magkaroon sila ng mga ganitong klaseng problema.
Okay.
Yan. So nagkaroon ito ng mga committee. Ang mga bawat paaralan ay nagkaroon ng Child Protection Committee. Ang bawat isa ay binigyan ng kanya-kanyang mga role. So naging malinaw sa bawat isa ang kanyang mga gampanin. So ang Child Protection Policy ay nailahad ng maayos. Kaya nga lang, siyempre, may kanya-kanyang problema na dapat kinikater ang bawat division. Hindi naman, porque meron na tayong ganitong polisiya, it's parang tama ito para sa lahat. Yan. Ngayon, sa tulungan ng ating SGOD na si Ma'am Nanet, dahil sa kanyang advocacy na tulungan ang mga bata, ay nag-come up siya with the creation ng sinasabi nating safeguarding manual. At nagkaroon ng consultation. At ang unang kinonsult niya, siyempre, kung sino yung nilalapitan ng mga bata. At ito yung mga guidance counselors at saka guidance designate. Yan. So nakita niya na ito pala yung mga problema. So hindi lang bata rin ang may problema. Pati na din ang mga guro, no, mga school personnel ay may problema din. So tama lang yung nilagay niya na safeguarding manual for learners and school personnel. So na-cover up yung lahat ng magiging problema o yung posibleng mag-arise na problema. So ang nangyari, nagkaroon kami ng series of consultation. Hindi lamang kami yung kinonsult, kundi lahat ng mga tamang stakeholders. Una, kinonsult namin yung mga guro. Yes. Kasi nakita namin na isa sila, no? Sa dapat na malaman kung ano yung role nila with this particular program. Sumunod, mga magulang. At ang pinaka-uli nga ay ang sinasabi nating mga batang kinakailangan nating gabayan. At ito yung mga school students natin. So, nung ma-consult sila, nabuo ngayon ang sinasabi nating manual. At doon lahat ipinasok, no, ang lahat ng pangangailangan para proteksyonan silang lahat. Hindi lang bata, kundi pati ang mga school personnel. So after nung ma-create ito, so pina-critic ito.
Evaluate.
Yes, pina-evaluate. Oh, sorry for the word. Pina-evaluate and happy naman kami kasi nagkaroon ng magandang feedback.
Okay.
So sa magandang feedback, nagkaroon uli ng consultation or parang webinar, ano ito? Yung
Nagkaroon conference o nagkaroon ng
online.
Online consultation.
Okay, online consultation. So doon tiningnan kung ano pa yung pwedeng yung mga gap, no? Kung ano pa dapat fill upan. So sa madaling salita, through that particular online consultation, nabuo namin ng maayos ang sinasabi nating manual na fit sa ating mga mag-aaral, fit sa ating Kalapan Division, at hindi na natin kinakailangan ng malawakang yung interpretation kasi malinaw ang pagkakalahad ng mga sinasaad dito sa manual na ito. So alam nilang lahat na hindi lang ito para sa bata, kundi para din sa mga school personnel. So malinaw na nailahad. Kaya nga, with the implementation of this particular manual, alam natin na nasa safeguard natin ang welfare ng lahat.
Ayan, so napakaganda naman po ng inyong mga sinabi kung paano ito binuo. Parang dugo at pawis, panahon, talino, eksperyensya, at syempre ang inyong kakayahan. At mula po sa Schools Division of Calapan City, kami po ay nagpapasalamat lalo sa iyo. At syempre, good luck sa iyong future endeavors. At syempre, nagpapasalamat po kami sa inyo, Madam, for sharing your expertise as a guidance counselor. Malaking naging tulong nito sa pagbuo ng ating safeguarding.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you po.
Tunay nga ang Child Protection Policy ay isang ilaw ng pag-asa at ito ang katuwang ng mga mag-aaral at ng mga magulang sa pagbibigay ng tinatawag na safe schools for all learners. At syempre, hindi magiging matagumpay ang implementasyon ng Child Protection Policy sa Departamento ng Edukasyon at maging sa Schools Division of Calapan City kung wala ang ating mga loyal partners, our dependable kasangga at kasama sa implementasyon nito. Napakapalad po natin, mga kasama at kasubaybayan, sapagkat kasama natin ngayon ang napakagandang Principal 4 ng Calapan Central School, Ma'am Agnes Santiago. Good morning, Ma'am.
Sir, good morning po.
Ayan. At syempre, kung may maganda, meron din tayong poging-pogi. At kapapanalo lamang nito. Kapapanalo lamang second term.
Second term.
Second term are City Councilor of the City Government of Calapan City, Honorable Councilor Rios Anthony Agua. Good morning.
Sir Joey, good morning. Ma'am Agnes, good morning.
Ayan, so alam ko na alam nyo na kung ano yung daloy ng usapan natin sapagkat ang pinag-uusapan natin ay ang dahilan kung bakit tayo narito. Kung bakit kayo nasa sektor ng pamamahala at kung bakit kayo nasa sektor ng edukasyon, ang ating mga batang Kalapenyo. Gusto ko pong malaman muna mula sa inyo yung maaari ninyong ibahagi para sa kanila at para sa tagumpay ng Child Protection Policy natin. Magsimula po tayo kay Ma'am Agnes.
Okay, good morning po. Unang-una po sa Calapan Central School, ipinapatupad po namin itong Child Protection Policy sa pamamagitan ng Homeroom PTA. Unang-una, sa unang pasukan pa lang, included na po sa isa sa mga agenda ang Child Protection Policy para magkaroon ng kaalaman, mas malawak na kaalaman yung mga magulang tungkol dito. At isa pa, included din po ito sa mga activities namin sa paaralan sa buong taon. Meron po kaming mga, katulad po mga activities, scouting activities. Isa po sa mga topics din, kasama din namin yung ang child protection. Bukod pa doon sa mga, syempre sa integration ng lesson natin sa mga iba, sa curriculum po. Yun po ang aming mga activities sa paaralan.
Kumusta po ang pagtanggap? Kasi ang Calapan Central School, isa sa pinakamalaking paaralan. We have different feeder barangays. Isa ito sa talagang sentro. Kumusta po ang pagtanggap ng ating mga stakeholders?
Nakita po namin napakaganda nung pagtanggap. Unang-una pa lang doon sa mga magulang, So nagkaroon sila ng malawak na kaalaman, ibig sabihin yung kaso bumaba. Okay. So naging aware sila sa mga nangyayari. Dapat alam nila kung ano nangyayari sa kanilang anak mula sa umaga pa lang hanggang sa hapon. Yung mga action ng mga bata, dapat alam nila, aware sila. Sa sa mga activities sa paaralan, yun naman pong mga eskwela namin ay nagkaroon din ng malawak na kaalaman. Alam nila kung paano nila aalagaan yung kanilang mga sarili.
Ayun, yun ang napakahalaga. They know how to protect themselves. Ayan, Sir Rios, yan ay sa perspektibo ng paaralan. Doon naman sa governance, sa pamamahala. Kasi nandun kayo sa posisyon, meron kayong malawak na impluwensya. Ano po ang pwede ninyong ibahagi dito sa programa na ito ng departamento?
First, Sir Joey, I would like to congratulate Ma'am Agnes for doing a good job in Central School. And for the part of the city government of Calapan, we have 3 points in order to assist, in order to support the program of DepEd and the national law, also, of course. First is information dissemination. If I understand correctly, DepEd Central is preparing information that can easily be consumed by the general public. So whether it be by school or hopefully in our case by barangay levels, communities. We have in Calapan City a unique situation, a unique department called the Education Department. This department, of course, is focused on any and every educational concern of the city. So in this respect, when we have general assemblies in the barangay levels, we can disseminate information that is from DepEd. And the second point is budget or appropriations for our cause. As you know, City Government of Calapan allots a portion of its budget for the Special Education Fund to make sure that some of the needs of the city in terms of education are met and the DepEd fund is augmented. And we'll make sure that to allot a fund or a portion of the SEF for the Child Protection Program of Calapan City. And third is probably one of the most important, which is legislation. It is our goal to create an ordinance or a city law that will put together the national law of anti-bullying and the Child Protection DepEd order so that we can create a unique law or ordinance that will protect our children here in the city of Calapan. That's what we can do to help, Sir Joey.
Napakaganda naman ng serious. Yan yung ganda ng convergence na tinatawag. Organizations help each other. At nakikita natin kung paano yung partnership ng LGU, ng Department of Education, at syempre ng ating mga parents para sa ating mga bata. Sabi nga lagi natin, para sa bata. Yan. Pag-usapan naman natin, ano yung pwede ninyong maging mensahe? Ma'am Agnes, sa inyo po, bilang isang school head, marami po tayong tagapanood. Nandito ang mga magulang, nandito ang ating mga partners, nandito ang ating mga school heads, kapwa ninyo educators. Mensahe niyo po para sa kanila, para mas maging matagumpay pa ang implementasyon nito.
Ang kailangan lang naman po natin ay yung suporta sa isa't isa. Para po sa pagsasakot para ng mga proyekto, dapat merong mga katulad ni Sir Rios na sumusuporta sa atin. At sa amin naman, sa mga katulad kong educators, kailangan nating ipatupad kung ano man yung mga dapat nating isagawa para sa mga kabataan. Dahil unang-una ang mga bata, yan ang ating magbe-benefit ng lahat. Sila yung ating future leaders, so dapat sila yung makatanggap, makalasap ng mga kinakailangan, ang protektang kinakailangan para maging mahusay silang mga citizens sa darating na panahon. So kinakailangan yung mga pagmamahal natin ay madama ng bawat isa ng mga bata. Katulad din ng mga educators, ng mga teachers, so kailangan din natin ang pagkakaisa para maipatupad ang mga layunin ng bawat isa.
Dahil hindi natin kayang tayo lang.
Hindi natin kayang tayo lamang. Kailangan natin ang isa't isa.
Pakaganda nun. Sir Rios, syempre, nais naming marinig ang mensahe mo para sa ating mga tagapanood ngayon.
Sir Joey, I would like to tell everyone to make sure that you put to heart the phrase, the youth are our future. They will inherit the earth, they will inherit our positions, whether you be a teacher, whether you be a street sweeper, whether you be a city councilor or a public official, they will inherit these positions. They will inherit our city. So it is our job to first and foremost invest in these future leaders, in these future teachers. Paano? We should create an environment that is safe, that is conducive to learning and loving. In order to create future leaders, in order to create good people, we have to make sure that our schools, our homes are safe and communities are safe for these children. And that is precisely what the Child Protection Program is doing. And like Ma'am Agnes says, it cannot be a one-point program. It cannot be just DepEd. It has to be a collaboration. Communities, public servants, schools, community leaders, we all have to do our part to make sure that this program, whether it be the National Law of Anti-Bullying, the DepEd Program of Child Protection Policy, be successful. Thank you, Sir Joey.
Pwede na talaga sa DepEd si Sir. Ayan, so napakaganda po na naging usapan natin at isang karangalan po na mabanggit nyo sa akin yung inyong mga naisin pa, mga mithiin at syempre ang mensahe ninyo. Maraming salamat Ma'am Agnes at good luck sa implementasyon, sa mas matagumpay pang implementasyon. At Sir Rios, kung ikaw ay nagiging katulong namin, tandaan mo na ang Departamento ng Edukasyon, kami na nasa sektor ng edukasyon ay patuloy din na susuporta sa iyong mga programa. Maraming salamat sa inyong dalawa.
Thank you po.
Tunay ngang madali ang pagkamit ng tagumpay kapag ang bawat isa ay sama-sama. At sa narinig nating commitment ng ating mga CPP champions, tunay nga na mapapangalagaan ang karapatan ng mga mag-aaral na Kalapenyo. Ma'am Nanat, narinig ninyo ang mensahe, ang commitment ng ating mga champions o mga loyal partners natin pagdating sa child protection katulad ni Sir Rios, ni Ma'am Agnes. Ano po ang mensahe nyo sa mga partners natin na katulad nila?
Yeah, natutuwa talaga ako. Alam mo yung feeling ko ngayon na hindi pala ako nag-iisa kasi minsan pag maraming pagsubok parang ayaw mo na rin Tapos yung support system, kailangan ko talaga yan. Now, buhat sa narinig ko sa kanila, talaga na-inspire ako, parang nakahugot ulit ako ng lakas na magpatuloy. At saka alam ko kasi sa Division Office, marami na tayo marami nang tumutulong talaga sa advocacy para sa protection ng mga bata. The more na narinig natin galing sa LGU, sa school heads, sa parents din, lahat yan talaga tumutulong sa atin at maraming salamat sa kanila.
Nakakatuwa na buo na ang puwersa ng child protection, hindi lamang sa division, it becomes collaborative. At syempre, ang dami po nating tagapanood ngayong araw na ito, hindi lamang po dito sa atin but doon sa buong Pilipinas. Ano po ang mensahe ninyo para sa ating mga manonood?
Alam mo, Sir Joey, alam ko sa mga manonood na ang karanasan ng Kalapan ay karanasan din nila. Ano po, ang naging pagsubok natin, ang mga munti nating tagumpay, alam ko meron din sila niyan eh. Ang masasabi ko lang, tayo ay kapit lang tayo. Patuloy na maging inspirasyon at lakas ng mga bata, ano. Yan kasi yung role natin, ano. At uulitin ko, tayo po kasi yung duty bearers na proteksyonan natin ang lahat ng karapatan ng mga bata. Masigurado natin yung kanilang kaligtasan, ano po. So, patuloy lang po tayo dahil minsan tayo rin po ay naging bata.
Ayun. Lahat tayo ay naging bata.
Yes, yes.
Ayan. Maraming salamat po, Ma'am Nanette, for enabling us to see and to experience your advocacy.
Yes.
Napakaganda pong bagay no na makita ang laman ng inyong puso, malaman kung ano kayo nagtagumpay at nasaan na ang child protection sa Schools Division of Calapan City. At hindi po yun mangyayari, hindi po magiging posible ang lahat ng yon without an adult champion like you. So, isa pong karangalan na makausap kayo ngayong araw na ito at ma-inspire sa inyong mga salita na ako pala, lahat pala kami ay napakalaki ng tungkulin para sa ating mga bata. Sapagkat ginagawa natin ito para sa bata at para sa bayan at ito ang ating araw-araw na panata.
Panatang maprotektahan ang aking sarili sa anumang uri ng paglabag sa aking karapatan at maging modelo sa kapwa ko mag-aaral.
Panatang maging kaagapay ng paaralan at mga magulang para proteksyonan ng mga mag-aaral.
Panatang gagabayan sila sa kanilang kinabukasan.
Panata na bumuo at magpatupad ng proyekto ng paaralan at magawing mas epektibo at aktibo ang Child Protection Committee para sa kapakanan at kaligtasan ng bawat mag-aaral.
Ang panata ko ay makiisa sa DepEd sa pagpapalaganap ng impormasyon, pagpupondo at pagbabatas.
Panata ko bilang isang magulang na ingatan at mahalin siya, gabayan hanggang sa makamit ang kanyang mga hangarin sa buhay.
Bata, ikaw ang dahilan kung bakit kami naririto sa kagawaran ng edukasyon. Malayo pa ang aming lalakbayin, maraming hamon pa ang aming susuungin, pero pasasaan ba't makararating din kami sa aming paroroonan upang maialay sa iyo ang ligtas na paaralang huhubog sa iyo bilang mabuting mamamayang Kalapenyo, bilang mabuting Pilipino. Bata, ito ang aming panata.